I agree with that.
Do we have everybody?
Yep.
Okay, thank you all for being a part of the meeting tonight. I'll call the Village of Victor Board of Trustees meeting for November 16th, 2020 to order. And if we rise in our place at home, and Deputy Mayor Mike Crowley can lead us through the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the
of the
flag
United
of the United
States,
States of America,
to the republic,
and
for which
to the republic
one
for
nation,
which it stands,
God,
one nation,
indivisible,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
with
and
liberty and
justice for
justice
all.
for all.
I think next time we got to mute ourselves.
We're getting better at that.
Yeah, we got to mute ourselves and let Mike just do the pledge and we can say it ourselves.
Come
Okay.
on, take all the fun out of it.
Yeah, I know. So first on the agenda tonight, we have Wes Petty from LaBella Associates to talk about Chapter 50 and some amendments he's been working on and how we could mesh that with Chapter 170 in the code. Wes, are you out there?
Sure am, Gary. Thanks. Thank you for having me discuss this with the Village Board of Trustees again. Since the last time we met, I did go back and take a look at Chapter 50 and compare it with Chapter 170. And as you recall, initially when LaBella had assisted the village with modifying Chapter 170, the intent was to kind of streamline the planning board review process for applicants that come to the village that want to do a project. For example, if they need to come before the village planning board to do site plan review, we didn't want it to be such a cumbersome process where maybe they also needed to go to the Architectural Preservation Review Board to get a certificate of appropriateness. So what we did with Chapter 170 and what the village has adopted includes some design criteria for architectural elements for the different business zoning districts in the village. However, Chapter 50 still remains in the code, as you know, and there's still that requirement where an applicant would need to go to the Architectural Preservation Review Board, seemingly a separate board, but I guess it's the same board in this instance for a certificate of occupancy, or not C of O, certificate of appropriateness. So rather than have a certificate of appropriateness, this can all be dealt with through a site plan review process via Chapter 170. And so I've proposed, what I've written down on what I've sent out earlier today was a document that could tentatively be an adjustment to the village code, the village zoning code, which includes some of the language that is currently found in Chapter 50. I've also had an opportunity to talk a little bit with Babette, and I see that she's on the meeting tonight. So essentially, what I've proposed here would seem to eliminate the Architectural Preservation Review Board, and eliminate the Architectural Preservation Review Boards or Planning Boards authority to designate landmarks or historic districts. And it eliminates the possible need for their certificate of appropriateness, and it preserves the intent and purpose behind preserving the village's historic character. And it preserves the planning board's review standards related to alterations, repairs, new construction, and demolition within the village center business district that can currently be found in Chapter 50. And I don't know if it's worthwhile. I don't know if we want to share the screen. I'd be happy to go through a little bit of the language here that I'd like to point out to you. And I think I'll start on page 37 for those that have the document. And the second section, 170-XYZ, paragraph B, it mentions this article is intended to protect the historic development pattern and architectural character of the Village Center Business District. I highlighted Village Center Business District because it's more precise and descriptive as to what the current zoning districts are in the village. And I don't want to try to force this upon you in terms of this is the way it needs to be. I'd like to get village board feedback, or I think it's probably up for discussion with everybody to be sure that this is meeting your needs. So it's intended to protect the historic development pattern and architectural character of the Village Center Business District, hereinafter referred to as the district, and to ensure that this pattern and character are extended into adjoining vacant lands. Existing development within this district contains structures of historic and cultural importance. Therefore, it is hereby declared as a matter of public policy that the protection, enhancement, and perpetuation of the village's historic resources inventory, including but not limited to those resources identified as being of high importance, as designated by the Landmark Society, are necessary to promote the economic, cultural, educational, and general welfare of the public. So this particular section, 170-XYZ, paragraphs A, B, C, are pretty much pulled from chapter 50, right? You'll see that in large part, it's consistent with what is already in chapter 50. And then if we go to the next page, page 38, also labeled section 170-XYZ, standards for review. These appear to be important items that I think the village would want to preserve if they were to consider, doing away with chapter 50 or potentially reserving chapter 50 for maybe future use as a historic preservation law at some point in the future. So this addresses alterations and additions to existing buildings, new construction, repairs to existing architectural features, and also demolition. And I think that's probably a point that you may want to discuss, or we may need to talk about in further detail. Paragraph D, demolition, is actually on page 39. And I've highlighted a couple areas here. If we take a look at those first three paragraphs on page 39 for demolition, and keep in mind, this currently, as it's written, would only apply to structures in the Village Center Business District, that zoning district for the Village Center. Paragraph 1, any proposed demolition must be reviewed by the planning board and must be reviewed by the town/village historian as detailed in section 170-21, paragraph K of this chapter. No structure may be demolished unless the planning board finds that the structure is a modern or otherwise non-contributing structure in the Village Center Business District. So I guess in my consultation with Babette, she pointed out to me that a non-contributing structure might be a structure that doesn't contribute to the historic value or historic character of the village, and she's happy to defer to her on further interpretation there. Paragraph 2, within the Village Center Business District, demolition may be permitted for structures listed as having either high or medium historical and architectural significance based on the village's historic resources inventory, reconnaissance level survey, last revised in 2017. After the property owner or developer of the site has submitted and obtained site plan approval for new development, including an acceptable timetable and guarantees, which may include a letter of credit or completion of the demolition project. In no case shall the time between demolition and commencement of new construction exceed 6 months. In paragraph 3, for instance, where the property owner or developer has not obtained site plan approval for new development, on a parcel where demolition is proposed, and the existing structure is listed as having medium or high significance as identified on the village's historic resources inventory, reconnaissance level survey, last revised 2017, the property owner or representative must demonstrate the following prior to planning board approving demolition. And so the following paragraphs there are consistent with what is currently found in chapter 50 for the hardship application, right? There's, I think in the Architectural Preservation Review Board, as part of the chapter 50 code, would allow, it appears that they would allow for demolition under, a hardship application, and they would need to demonstrate to the Architectural Preservation Review Board that, these certain hardships would exist if they weren't allowed to, go forward with demolition. So that's a very brief overview of the potential changes. And so I guess one of the ideas that I had coming out of the last meeting would be implementing this particular change to chapter 170 and then deleting the rest of chapter 50 so that there wasn't a reference to needing to go to the Architectural Preservation Review Board for a certificate of appropriateness. Definitely here to answer your questions if you've got questions on that, or if you have comments, or I mean, there might be some people that don't agree with this approach. I know that maybe Babette has some thoughts and she might like to supplement or provide some additional detail with her concerns. So.
If I could.
Absolutely, Babette.
So under demolition, where Wes has written the applicant can appeal to hardship, and I would like to see an appeal process. For example, let's say that the person doesn't really show to the planning board any hardship. Well, and then the planning board says, no, you can't demolish, you have to build another building. Then in chapter 50, you had an appeal process which said that within 30 days of the planning board's refusal or negative compliance to demolition, the person who wanted to demolish the building could appeal to the village board of trustees. So there's another step. And I know it sounds like, oh, you're, the historian, why would you want another step? Wouldn't you just rather have it stop there? Yeah, I would, but I think that this is giving due process to the owner of the building or the structure.
Thanks, Babette. So what you're saying is the appeal process that is currently, the language is currently in chapter 50 seems adequate for
It's
what you're saying you would like to see.
Right, it's 50-8. So you could just read it from there. I don't know what, maybe Reed has or Wes has some sort of legal reasoning why it might not want to be in there, but I just thinking, it's letting the person go through all of his due diligence and due process so that everybody gets a chance at every level to make a decision. And it's demolition, I think, which is what the crux of this whole questioning of chapter 50 is. And
so Babette, just to follow up on Babette's comment here, section 50-8, as she mentioned, outlines the appeals process for demolition. And it mentions any person aggrieved by any decision of the Architectural Preservation Review Board relating to hardship or certificate of appropriateness may, within 30 days of the decision, file a written application with the Village Board of Trustees For review of the decision, reviews shall be conducted based on the same record that was before the Architectural Preservation Review Board and using the same criteria. So it doesn't look like there's anything that spells out that, but I think probably the intent here was for a property owner or an applicant to appeal a decision of the Architectural Preservation Review Board to the village board and potentially have the village board override or overrule or reverse the decision of the Architectural Preservation Review Board. It doesn't look like it actually states that, but it seems like that maybe was the intent. I do know that just as a matter of general course for planning boards and planning board decisions, any decision that is appealable, but it's not appealable to the Village Board of Trustees. It's appealable to the through Article 78. It's appealable to the state Supreme Court. So that's where the appeal would go to, rather than staying at a local entity.
So this really wasn't applicable anyway.
What do you mean? It seems like it's applicable to any of the decisions that were made by the Architectural Preservation Review Board.
But it could,
Excuse me, Babette. So the question I would pose is to Reed, as a legal matter, is it proper for the Village Board of Trustees to have that power or authority over the planning board in this case? Or,
They're acting in the classic planning board role. They're acting as an architectural review board. I think we could do it. I'm not so sure there's a benefit to it. You know, there's always a route to take an appeal, and if the standard is exactly the same at the planning board level as it is at the village board level, I'm not sure why we're creating a double look, two shots at it from. I don't know that. I mean, I could take a look at it. I haven't really had a chance to go through this at all yet, so I don't know. But I'd be inclined to leave it with Article 78 as the appeal.
okay,
Can I,
go ahead, Meg.
well, I'm thinking that we have an appeals process of decisions that are made, which would be with the Zoning Board of Appeal. Would it be simpler if the village board does not want that responsibility, that it rather than go to a court, could it go to the Zoning Board of Appeals as a primary step? And then if that gets rejected, the applicant could go to a higher court, which would be the 78 provision.
I don't know,
So
Reed.
Yeah, I don't know that we couldn't do that. I'm not sure that. I'll have to give that some thought, honestly.
Yeah,
It seems if we could, give the applicant a pathway that would stay within the village first, and then if they're not satisfied with that answer, then it would be up to them to go to a higher court, is my thought.
it sounds to me like some good ideas floating here, and if Reed has some time to look all this over and do a little thought and research on it, then maybe we can have a more definitive approach to it. But one way or the other, I think some kind of appeal process makes sense.
And I thoroughly agree with that. I guess I'm just trying to figure out a simpler process for the applicant rather than have to go to a court.
Absolutely. One
Well,
step
the
at
other
a
side of
time.
that argument, we can think about it and talk about it. The other side of that is maybe they want to get out of the village as soon as possible, and now we're just creating another step that they have to take in the village before
Well,
they can even get somebody who can, make a decision.
Okay, then my question to you would be, if it were to be turned down, could they go to the court automatically as opposed to going to the zoning board? I mean, is that an avenue? And then it's their decision whether they want to go that route as opposed to the zoning board of appeals or the village board, if that's what we're trying to do, is
Yeah,
not
I don't
have a
think
decision.
that's really the option. I think it's gonna have to be one way or the other.
Okay. I'm not opposed to either one. I'm just kind of looking at it from the point of view of the applicant. It would be less cumbersome to go to the zoning board first and then higher up, but
All right. I think we need some further review of that
okay,
to make a decision on it. But I do believe the appeals process, we need to clarify.
okay.
And Babette, thank you for bringing that up.
Welcome.
Before I open this up to the rest of the board, I wanted to ask you, with the changes that Wes has proposed, do you have any objections to those at the moment? I mean, you two can take more time to review this. I just took one very quick look at it. I would like to take a little more time with it as well.
I think Wes and I are pretty much on the same page, but I really would like to go through it a little more carefully.
Okay. Anybody on the board have any comments?
I just think the changes that Wes proposed address a lot of the concerns that we had, about, future boards maybe not wanting to preserve historical character. This seems to do it, almost better than the current chapter 50, it seems to me, but that's my thought.
Okay, thanks, Carol. It certainly does simplify things, which would be a good thing if we can accomplish both objectives that way. Anybody else? Any comments?
I'm generally in agreement with Wes's revisions. My question is back to the appeal process. Are we talking about an appeal process that is just for demolition of historic buildings, or are we talking about a general appeal process where any decision the planning board makes gets appealed and how it should be appealed? Because I'm not sure I see why it should be different for a demolition of a historic building in the district as opposed to just any other decision that they might make as a planning board. Maybe Wes or you could help me understand that.
Yeah, well, I can give you a little bit of context, at least, with how other communities in New York State deal with appeals. And generally the planning board decisions aren't appealable to a zoning board of appeals. I know that the ZBA has the word appeals in it, but generally the ZBA has the appellate jurisdiction where they're allowed to review variances, like an area variance for dimensional standards and use variances for uses that aren't allowed in a certain district, but somebody would like to have that use in a certain district where it's not allowed. And then also, I think it's called the original jurisdiction, where sometimes the local governing body gives the ZBA the jurisdiction to review special use permits, or in some cases, even site plan applications. I don't feel that it's typical for them to review site plans. So really, their basic functions are appellate in nature, use in area variances, as well as interpretations, right? So if there's somebody that has a question about how a municipal official is interpreting the code, then that an interpretation can be appealed to the ZBA. But decisions of planning boards, by and large, are only appealable to the state Supreme Court through Article 78.
Okay.
That's my understanding anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that was a good pertinent question, Bob. And Wes, appreciate your follow-up on that.
But that's just in general, you know, there may be instances, I don't know that I'm aware of any, where a local governing body gave some jurisdiction to a ZBA to hear an appeal on a certain type of application that goes before a planning board, such as a demolition. I don't know of any instances where that occurs. It's possible, but it
Yeah,
doesn't seem to be the norm.
what you're saying makes a lot of sense. Mike Crowley, any thoughts on any of that?
Well, I certainly wouldn't task the zoning board with it. I think the process in place for an Article 78 is, you know, it's got a lot of history behind it. It works for the applicant. You know, if it's something that they really feel they've been unjustified by, they can, you know, go that route.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that, and think that we might be overstepping the boundaries by trying to go the other way and involving the zoning board in the situation. I guess the question would remain then: do we need to involve the village board in the process, or, as Meg put it, should the applicant just simply have that option to go directly to an Article 78 if they feel aggrieved? You know, and currently I'd say that's what kind of makes the most sense to me. We don't right now have it that way in Chapter 50, but we certainly could change the code so that the village board doesn't get involved. But I don't know. Again, I want Reed to maybe think a little bit about it and weigh in a little more on it when he has a chance to do that. Wes, you look like you got something you want to say.
Yeah, I just had an idea, and it may take care of this potential appeals process at the local level. Maybe if there's an application for a demolition in front of the planning board for review, maybe there's a process that's developed and it can be articulated in the code where the planning board refers that application to the village board of trustees for a recommendation. That way, maybe the applicant has an opportunity to go to the village board of trustees, kind of plead their case, state what their case is all about, and then before the planning board takes action on that, maybe the village board of trustees makes that recommendation back to the planning board.
Go ahead, Babette, if you have something.
I just think I agree with Reed that it's like doing that process over again. You still have the same information, and then if the planning board says no, then you give the same information to the village board. And I like the idea of the Article 78 because it takes it out of everybody's hands and it puts it in a more objective venue.
Yeah,
I would agree.
Okay. Also, I can't remember, I don't have Chapter 50 in front of me, but somewhere, I think it's either in Chapter 50 or in 170, the planning board has, according to our code, the ability to enlist advice, if you will, or consultation from outside sources or from within the village government. So,
Yeah.
I mean, these kinds of discussions could take place, outside of a legal setting, let's put it that way. I don't know if that's the right way to put it. But doesn't give anybody any legal authority over the process or the project. It's just a matter of the planning board being able to seek advice from others. And that's written right into the code, right, Wes?
It is, yeah.
But we
I-
took that out, didn't we, Wes?
Well, if we look at this new language that's kind of written in blue text,
Right.
on page 40, so it's the last paragraph, this has to do with maintenance. No owner or person with an interest in real property included within the village center business district shall permit the property to fall into a serious state of disrepair so as to result in a deterioration of any exterior architectural feature which would, in judgment of the planning board, which if necessary will retain the services of a professional architectural consultant, produce a detrimental effect upon the character of the district as a whole or the life and character of the property itself.
But that's just specific to that one piece of maintenance and repair,
Yeah.
not to
Demolition.
demolition.
Oh. No, I don't think, no, that would not be specific to demolition.
Well, I know that after emails with Babette, what I've done is I've asked Roseanne when we have any demolitions within the village central business district, that she put on the list of people that we have review projects. And so that way there, I consider her a consultant. Is that allowable? Or,
Well,
I mean, just like we have, like the engineers do reviewing of projects, we have DPW, the fire department, the code enforcement people. So if it involves, particular buildings that are within that district, that the review would go to Babette or whoever the historian is at the time, for review with all parties together. I mean, not with them, but as part of our process of getting, the experts to chime in on a project.
yeah, I just think that the code states pretty well that, you can access other opinions before
Right,
you
in which,
before you
yeah,
make a final judgment.
right. And I think that, that's what we normally do for particular projects, but, adding, the historian as an additional review for, that district.
That'd be great.
Yeah, so we already have, I talked with Roseanne this morning. And so we've added you on to that list of people that we will be having review projects that come down the pike.
Not just demolitions.
Well, you can ask, you tell me what it is that you would want us to see. I mean, like if we have a sign that goes up on a building in that district, do you want to have a review on it?
We can talk offline about that. Is that okay?
Sure.
Just make sure after you talk offline that we know what's going on as a board.
No, we're going to
Okay.
keep it a secret.
Okay.
So just for clarification, the existing section 170-20, responsibility for costs, this has to do with site plan review, mentions that costs incurred by the planning board for consultation fees, including but not limited to attorney and engineering fees or other extraordinary expenses in connection with review of a proposed site plan shall be charged to the applicant. So I think that is somewhat telling me that, the planning board does have the ability to retain some outside expertise to help consultation and process that
Right.
application that might be in front of you.
Correct. That's how I look at it. And Babette, what's your charge per hour for this?
It's 1,000 times what I charge the town.
Oh, that's a bargain.
Yeah, 0.
I'm comfortable with chatting with Babette offline to kind of figure this whole thing through, and then we'll come back and talk to the board. Is that kind of, are you okay with that, Babette?
Absolutely.
Gary, is that okay that I do that?
That sounds good to me. I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I don't have any problem with that. Any other board members want to comment? So,
Okay.
Wes, thanks for the work you've done. And what I would like to see happen is that we all the board members, everybody take a little bit of time here to review this stuff offline, as we say, because we just got it today. And
Right.
I'm not in a hurry myself, my own opinion, I'm not in a hurry to set a public hearing and, change the code right away. I don't feel the necessity for that at this point in time. I mean, we discussed the project at 34 West Main during the last meeting, and it's my belief that we can through the planning board accomplish what needs to be accomplished there with the applicant. He just needs to get his plan and then apply to the planning board for site plan review. And I think we have discussed the current code and the demolition situation and so forth. And with the extenuating circumstances we've got in this economy and so forth and so on, I don't think it's unreasonable at all that the interpretation of the code in this case would be, favorable for the applicant. That's the way I see this. So I don't see this code change as being a deciding factor in that particular project at this time. I don't know if any other board members want to comment on that, but that's how I see this.
I agree, Gary. I mean, I think that should go forward. And it seems like there is enough information and that the discussion from the last meeting should be sufficient to work something out with the owner.
Okay, and going forward, as far as the further review of chapter 50 and chapter 170, I really appreciate the framework Wes has created for us. And our whole premise here is to simplify and make things more doable for a developer downtown. We're not going to give away the ranch or the farm, but we do want people to be able to, like Mike said at the last meeting, to come and develop in downtown Victor. Our whole revitalization plan kind of depends on that. So I think this is a good step in the right direction. And I just want to make sure, and I've wanted to make sure from the start, that we retain enough of chapter 50 to have some teeth for the planning board to utilize in their review process. And not undo, the premise of the studies we've had done that we paid a lot of money for. Those are studies, I know they're not laws, but there's some pretty good ideas in there that we can utilize, and revitalizing or changing this portion of the code is going to help with that. So
So is the outcome to take what we want out of section 50 and get rid of section 50?
I think basically, yeah, if we can effectively do that, and like Wes said, maybe we reserve the chapter for something else in the future, but is that everybody else's understanding?
Yes, I mean, I haven't had a chance to read thoroughly the 63 pages of section 170. I got home too late. But I will do that, and but from the discussion we've had, I'm agreeable to everything that we've talked about.
Okay, Mike, you okay with that?
Yep.
Everybody else okay with, I guess what I would say to sum this up for tonight is we'll continue to take a look at this information that Wes has provided and, you know, and get your own thoughts together and rather than set a public hearing right now, I just feel that's premature right now. I know the goal was to.
I would
set-
say that too, like
Yeah,
maybe wait till after the first of the year.
Yeah, I think
with
the
the
goal
two
was December
holidays.
3rd, but it is a little bit, it's just not necessary right now to do it.
Yeah.
So that's my thought. And if everybody else on the board is agreeable, then we'll continue to review, and Reed can think a little bit about the appeal process conversation we had. And Babette, you're gonna get together a little more information for us on
Sure.
a possible, you know, historic district and certification as a community and so forth, right?
That's correct. As long as you understand, you have to pass a historic preservation law.
In order to even go down the path. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
and that'll be an interesting discussion because there's pros and cons to doing that for sure.
Right. Right.
And again, to me, that's another reason why it's so important to retain enough of Chapter 50 where maybe we don't have to go down that path and do all that. But that remains to be seen.
Right.
Thanks, Wes. I appreciate all your work you've done.
You're quite welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Wes. You're a good man.
All right. You guys know where to find me.
Okay,
All right, take care.
Appreciate it. Okay.
Gary,
Yes,
can I just ask a question?
sure.
Would it be okay if I listened in on the next application?
I guess it's okay. Yeah.
I don't
Can
know.
I also?
What's that,
Can I-
Mike?
It's a public meeting.
Yeah, yeah.
Anybody can
Okay.
listen in.
No, I just wasn't sure. Just don't want to overstep my bounds.
Well, I appreciate that. Babette, anything?
I just wondered if I could also sit in because it is a historic home of high historic importance, and so is the barn.
Okay. So with that, we'll move on to the next individual on privilege of the floor is Dan O'Brien at 165 South High Street. Dan, I'm sorry I haven't recognized you prior to now, but I hope you're out there
Hello, how are you all doing?
doing well.
Sorry, my screen is not working with me tonight, so I'm just going to be voice, it looks like.
Okay, and we know that you wanted to talk to the village board regarding your project there for culinary events.
Yes, so I was wondering what word you were going to use, and I'm glad that you said events. So I've gone many avenues, and I can give a kind of a briefing of what I'd like to do if that would help everybody.
Yes, and I just want to say, we know a little bit about your project. Mike Crowley, I know, has had discussion with you, and but if you can fill us in, we'd appreciate that.
Sure. So my background has been in the culinary field for over 26 years, mostly trained 11 years in Washington, D.C., a few years in Boston, also in Breckenridge, Colorado. I've moved back to the area, purchasing this house about 2 years ago with my wife, and we would like to take the skills that I've learned and put them into use for a culinary event center. Working with small groups, to show maybe the forgotten skills from butchering animals all the way down to making salumis, as well as we're using opportunity to showcase the Finger Lakes by using wine dinners. And from those travels that I've done, I've met many colleagues that would come up and spend some time here cooking dinners alongside and hosting small groups and gatherings.
Okay, now, I know that you've been before the planning board, right?
Yep.
And the zoning board, correct?
Yep.
And the planning board was receptive originally of your project. And I think that there was a modification to the project after that. And the zoning board, you went before them and they turned you down.
Yeah, so the planning board was of June 26, 2019.
Okay.
From that point, we looked at how to take care of the structure of the barn. The barn foundation is rotted out, and that's actually how we got the house. We tried to put a bid on it and somebody outbid us, and then they went back because of the foundation of the barn was not being taken care of. We were able to get the house. We then in 2020, July, went in front of the the zoning board for an R1. Now, we did not go back to the zoning board for a use variance. We decided to cut our losses, my wife and I, and just go straight to you guys after we talked to, with the help of Michael, talking to Marty, and also a few other people within the village.
And can you tell me what the gist of the conversation was you had with Marty and Mike? And
Yeah, you're not zoned for it. So that was, the big one. But B, that the zoning for the village has not really ever taken on a zoning for High Street because there is only, I believe, 7 houses within the village. Neighbors was always a big one to win them over or to figure out how to talk to them. And that was kind of the key points.
so what you're asking, what is it you want the village board to do?
Marty said that we could go for through the process of a PDD, which is a process which we would then be doing pretty much all the labor, getting the site plans, getting everything, and then submitting it to your board and I believe other boards, and then they have the right to turn us down for the PDD. The issue behind that, I have no problem to do that. It's going to be a big investment. Or I was wondering if you guys were willing to look at this opportunity and maybe see how you can work with me or change working with the code, and then that way. I've been through all avenues. I've gone through everything. I've gone through all your properties in the village, all the way down to the Chit Chat Cafe, to the new remodeled one on Maple. I've talked to pretty much everybody, had conversations, had emails, talked to real estate agents. I would like to stay in Victor. My track record is pretty good with restaurants so far. Seasonal Pantry was nationally known, which was my restaurant in Washington, D.C. So I have the ability, I believe, to bring tourism to this area and do a good job and make this place kind of something more with the Finger Lakes and the start of the wine trails. So I'm just trying to get that possibly started, and wanted to see if you guys would be willing to help me reach those goals.
So I can appreciate your culinary experience is extensive. I can appreciate, you bought the property hoping you could do something like this. And quite frankly, we're glad you're in Victor. And I can't really speak for every member of the board, but I'm pretty sure that everybody would like to find a way to make it work. We don't currently have the answer to that. Just a couple of comments regarding the zoning situation. It is zoned as R1. And, you know, you have a neighborhood there, as you mentioned, of about 7 neighbors or whatever.
Yep.
Have you had conversations with your neighbors?
I have. I was actually appointed to do so by Kathy to do that. We actually typed up a whole packet and sent it out. We only got 1 packet returned out of the 7 that we dropped off. We heard through the grapevine other neighbors being upset. And I get that. Change is not something people want to, you know, they feel like the Y was an issue from what I've heard, and a few other things were an issue. The food bank was an issue I've heard through this area of the high street. What we're proposing is to better our property. We're not just looking to do that. I mean, the idea is not just a culinary, it's agriculture. We're trying to grow and utilize the things on the property. We already have bees on the property. So in the end, the worst thing that I can see from my neighbors is taxes wanting to go up because we would actually be making the property improved. But that's another hurdle that I'll have to tackle. And I'm happy to do so any which way to try to work with my neighbors to make them happy.
Well, I can say personally, I'm pleased that you reached out to the neighbors. That's could be the biggest hurdle of all, but and your initial response from them kind of tells you that. But there's a couple of things to change the zoning there. You know, we're the legislative board that has the power to do that, or the authority to do that. But to just change the zoning to suit one individual's project is a slippery slope to go down for the
Yes,
village board of trustees.
yes,
And
understood.
it's a small village, you know, it's not a big city. It's not like we can make that happen without too many people noticing.
Yep.
And I don't know that we would ever want to just do something like that. The other issue that brought to my attention is, you know, you brought up a PDD, a planned development district. That's a possibility that's been discussed through our revitalization plan. And, you know, I know it's been done in other places. I know the town has some experience with it, but we currently don't have a PDD law on the books, I don't believe. Mike, you can chime in if, I don't think we have, and I think we would need to pass a local law allowing planned development districts in general.
Yeah, that's on Reed. I don't know of one, and I don't know of the requirement to need one.
Yeah, we would need to pass a local law to establish a planned development district.
And Reed, would that be a law that allows us to establish a planned development district, you know, one at a time? Or does that say, okay, you have this local law that says those things can happen, and then when somebody brings a project in and is looking for a planned development district, then, you know, you go to a certain area and you say, well, we got a local law that says we can establish one, so here's the parameters, you know, for this one.
I believe, and this just came up last week, I really have not worked with planned development districts at all, so I'm kind of new to this one as well. But I believe that what we would have to do is pass a specific local law to create a, you know, the planned development district that's being requested in this case, or that's being suggested in this case, and the parameters for it in that specific district. And then if we wanted to do it again, we would create another planned development district under with
Okay.
another local law. That's my understanding. I can double check that.
Yeah.
Gary,
Yes.
I was reading over the town law that Marty referenced to Dan on planned development districts.
Okay,
Yeah, it did say, you have to set it, you have to do a local law that has all the, we said all the parameters of a planned development district. You wouldn't do it just for this particular one. You create the law with all the requirements, and then you can use it for any district that you want to create.
I see.
within
And
the village.
then depending on what the project is, things would be different, across.
Right. The law outlines, various, options, but it all
Okay.
goes through planning and then the village board.
Yeah,
working
so
on it.
back to my original comment, it sounds like we would create a basically just general law, local law to allow planned development districts in the village of Victor. And then
Right.
the example of your particular application, Dan, would be, specific to your plan.
Okay.
So, I mean, that would, if we chose to do that, it doesn't happen overnight. I don't know if Marty's had that discussion with you.
Oh, Marty's talked about it with me,
Yeah.
that, things are
Okay.
going to take time, but I mean, for many people that know me, I'm persistent and I go through the hoops to get things done, because at the end of the day, I want this. This is something that I truly believe is worthwhile. And it's not only, this is my career, it's kind of my retirement. It's kind of my idea for my purpose of what I like to do in life.
I understand, and I appreciate your passion for what you do. So as far as developing or creating a local law, I'm not, at this point, I don't have an opinion on whether I want to do that, and I don't know about the rest of the board. I
Right.
do know from discussions I've had with Marty and in the past with a couple other people over at the town, that it can be a real challenge when you do create that law. It's a challenge to control the development that comes in. It seems like makes it easier when it's a planned development district, because you can get pretty specific about what's going to be allowed there and what isn't. But as Marty has told me, the enforceability of what you create can be the issue. So I just bring this up because to me, it's a process that would take a while to vet as a village before we would even decide to do it. I'm not trying to discourage you. I'm just trying to be upfront and honest with you.
No, thank you. I appreciate
About
it.
how I see the process. And I'm no expert. This is just my opinion based on what I've heard and seen so far. As far as changing the current zoning that's there to some other type of zoning, we have not, as a board, really had a discussion about that. And that is even a slipperier slope to me, to try and do something like that. And whether you even want to try and do something like that. I mean, we all want your project to happen and be successful, but we also don't want to force change on the people who already live there. It has to be a meaningful compromise before you consider something like that. Not just meaningful to the applicant, but meaningful to the entire neighborhood. So, I know Marty's also had discussions with you about how costly it would be.
Yep.
To do it. So I appreciate his honesty with you too, and providing you with information. Does anybody else on the board have any comments they want to make? Any suggestions they want to make? Any questions for Dan? Babette, I know you're concerned about the historical nature of the property. Dan, if you've been on the meeting since the beginning of the board meeting, you know that we have the town historian here with us tonight.
Yes.
She's also
Hi.
the village historian.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Dan, have you tried the Champion Hills Country Club restaurant is closed. Have you thought of putting something there where you would have, you couldn't grow anything or whatever, but it's an opportunity with parking, with people that are going to be there. And it's usually closed in the winter, so you'd have all winter to use that facility. It's not being used now, so I just wondered if that was something you could look into.
To go that route with you to really get into this and understand why Dan do you have to have it on your property, or why is it important to have it on your property?
Right.
You have to look at right now the restaurant scene, especially even with COVID. I'm not here to build a 32 seat or a 60 seat or an 80 seat. It's about intimacy. It's about small. It's about dining. If you've ever looked at Seasonal Pantry online in its past pictures, it was 12 seats. Ideally, I'm in that same ballpark, a few more seats than that. But we're trying to make it about the property. If I was to say, hey, this would become a bed and breakfast, except for you don't have the breakfast, you have the dinner, which is more important to me than the breakfast. That would be something we would build down the road. That's a theory that, we start with this one project and it may evolve to that down the road. I can give examples of that, but it's the money. You don't per square foot. So if we went to go look at Chit Chat Cafe, which I did, great. It's a reasonable price for the cafe. They say it's a turnkey, but as soon as I walk in there and I purchase that, the health inspector is going to come in and say, that's outdated. And so I'm going to spend $34,000 or more just to bring that up to code. And then I've got the property next to it, which when you walk through that, it's got the ceilings just caving in and water's coming in, and that's a problem. I didn't own that property and I didn't run that business for X amount of years, but that's not my goal. My goal is to upkeep the property. And that's why I'm not trying to search for a certain location. I kind of searched for that location at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I did do my due diligence because prior to Marty, I was having conversations while I was in DC before we were buying this house about that. Could this house be this, what I was trying to do with the code enforcement person at the time?
Does anybody else on the board have anything they want to say? Carol, you look like you might have had something on your mind.
I was just, no.
Well, it currently is, as you know, Dan, a rock and a hard place.
Yep.
And I don't know what to tell you here tonight, other than, we don't have a decision that we're going to make tonight.
Yes.
It's appreciated that you gave us your personal perspective on what you want to do and what you see the property as the possibility for it. I don't know what the answer is here tonight, but I hope that we can continue to talk about it. And I don't know if we'll come to a solution very quickly on something like this, but again, it seems like the planned development district is the route we might consider, but I guess I just don't know enough about the planned development district idea to really say whether I'm in favor of going down that road or not. But I certainly can do more research and become a little bit more educated on that process, and I'm willing to do that.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for your time.
And if you have contacts or people who've experienced it in your business, and you have perspective you can bring to us, that's great.
For PDDs.
Yeah,
Yeah, the only one that Marty and I really talked about was the car wash. So I mean, I'm not really with the town. That's the only one for
Yeah.
Royal Car Wash in the town. So that's all I'm familiar with. So, well, thank you, and I'll continue to see what I can do. Appreciate it.
okay, thank you for speaking with us tonight, and we wish you the best, and hopefully something can be worked out.
Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
You too. Okay. Next on the agenda is the clerk's report.
I've got a resolution for the acceptance of the November 2nd minutes.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mike,
I'll second.
second by Carol. Is there any discussion, questions, or comments on the minutes from November 2nd? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Right.
Any opposed? None.
And I have a resolution to accept the payment of bills, abstract number 12.
Is there a motion?
I'll make the
Okay.
motion.
Motion by Carol,
I'll second it.
second by Bob. Any discussion on the abstract? I had one question and Diane answered that, and I believe she copied everybody in on that. It was parts and pieces is what I'll call it. Things for the water department. Okay, if there's no other questions or comments on the abstract, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None.
And Chuck requested that I bring this to the board for approval. They've come out with a new retention and disposition schedule for New York local government records. And we have to adopt this resolution or adopt the new schedule before the first of the year. So they submitted this resolution to me and Chuck forwarded it on to me. Did everybody see it?
Yes.
So is there a motion for the resolution?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Bob. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Michelle. And Pam, this is a change in the retention period for records, is that?
It must be. I haven't seen it. Chuck just gave me this resolution and I don't know what the changes are. I'm sure he would know, but I'm sure he's looked through it already, but something's changed or they wouldn't have sent out a new one.
Yeah, so it's something that Chuck says is necessary.
Yes.
So I don't have any real question or comment on it. I trust Chuck explicitly. I saw him today at the school district. If I had realized this, if I had looked through all the documentation and realized this, I would have asked him about it, but. So are there any comments or questions on this resolution? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None.
And this is the first resolution that we mentioned, the 2021 village election. Resolved that the next annual election of the Village of Victor will be held on Tuesday, March 16th, 2021, and the offices to be voted on are mayor, 2 years, trustee, 2 years, and the second trustee for 2 years. Right now, it's scheduled for March 16th, so we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see if that stands. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Michelle, a second.
Second.
Second by Bob. Any questions or comments? Or other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? None.
And I know this was late, but Kathy and Amy sent over their plans for their event on December 5th, and I forwarded it on to everybody. Just for you to see, because we don't have another meeting before the event.
Right, that's scheduled for December 5th, right?
Yep. Yes.
Saturday, December 5th.
Yep.
Is that
And
the
there'll be-
correct, is that the correct date?
Yeah.
So
And
our
there'll be-
next,
Our
excuse
next
me.
meeting is December 7th.
Okay. Yeah, so they want to have like a Christmas event, scaled down Christmas event. They want to have the seniors drive through town with their cars decorated. This is Amy described this to me, and I read a little bit of Kathy's email this morning. And they want, I believe they want the seniors to take part in the lighting of the Christmas tree at Mead Square Park, and maybe have them drive around some of the village neighborhoods in a little car parade. So I know I'll be working with probably Brian Siesto at school, and possibly Tim Terranova, and then the sheriff's department, because it would be happening at a fairly busy hour on Saturday. So if anybody has any comments along the way about it, don't hesitate to get those to me or call me and we can discuss it. You know, to me, it's a real challenge to do anything in this environment, this COVID environment, and Kathy and Amy are just pulling out all the stops to do what they can do, in particular for the business community, but for the community in general, to keep spirits up and keep us moving forward. So I certainly appreciate what they're doing, and I'm pretty sure you do as well as a board. Anything else, Pam?
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yeah, you too.
Happy Thanksgiving, Pam.
As quiet as it may be in everybody's house, we'll still be able to enjoy a holiday. Any trustee reports tonight? Bob, anything?
Excuse me.
Went to a library meeting, but nothing really has changed. They're still looking at 2 sites, both in the village.
Okay. And Carol, anything?
No, we finally got a request for payment for the 2 facade projects in the village this year, so we'll be taking care of those.
Okay. When is the next URA meeting?
January, whatever that second Wednesday of January is.
Okay.
Will you wait till then, Carol, or are you gonna have a special meeting to pay out those
Well,
payments?
we've got one completed request. We're waiting for this, if the second one comes in fairly soon, then we'll have just a quick special meeting to approve those payments.
All right.
And if it doesn't, I think we'll have a special meeting just to approve the one, and I don't know what's going on with the other one. Kathy gave them an extension.
So that'll probably be in December.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Our next regular meeting is January.
Okay. Thanks, Carol. Michelle, anything?
I had tree board. The big discussion around that was they made a decision that they're not going to do a full scale Arbor Day event because it's just too risky. They'd have to order their trees now for that Arbor Day event. So they think they're just going to do kind of a symbolic planting like they did this past spring. And then it also buys them more time to figure out where the next big planting can be or take place. And I think that was pretty much it. Yeah, and then I have a library board tomorrow. So that's it.
Is it
Okay.
here again, Michelle? I don't think I have it written down. Is it
Which one?
here? Library board meeting?
It's actually going to be Zoom now.
Okay.
Yeah. They're going to Zoom it. I'm pretty sure.
Thanks, Michelle.
Yep.
Mike, anything?
Nope.
I'm pretty sure like the zoning board and the planning board, neither one of them are meeting this month, right?
Right.
And I don't even know about next month. If there's anything that's come in yet. Okay, Reed. Anything for you tonight?
I don't, thank you.
Okay, so a quick update, and Pam can chime in anytime on the code enforcement officer position. Pam, did the letter from Jack Marin go to every board member?
No,
Okay, that's okay. Just to let you all know, I think we mentioned at last meeting that, you know, we've got the ball rolling on hiring and creating a new position for code enforcement and hiring somebody, because we know that the contract we have with the town expires at the end of December. And Diane, you know, sent out to you the duties and responsibilities and the qualification statement and so forth. That's gone to the county. They've had it now for what?
they probably it just went in the mail today.
It just went in the mail today, okay. The timing is good to get that going, because we did get a letter from Supervisor Marin about code enforcement and our situation with the contract. So I'll back up a step or two and tell you that on Veterans Day, I had a discussion with Jack. And the Friday before Veterans Day, Sean McAdoo put in his letter of resignation at the town code enforcement department. He is moving on to the fire district as their treasurer. And I believe, according to Jack and the conversation we had on Veterans Day, they will retain him on an as-needed basis for commercial property reviews. So I don't know if that's a contract or how they're working that, but anyways, it sent some shockwaves out through the town and the village, thinking about code enforcement. So long story short is Jack sent a letter, and I can send it out to you, or Pam can, talking about ending the contract for code enforcement with the town. So his wishes are to end it December 31st, which is the date we, agreed to. However, we did agree to a 60-day time period for notifying, that you want out of the contract. And the situation, is that the timing of this letter is probably a couple weeks premature to those 60 days, but I don't have a big issue with that. I mean, they're going to be in a bind, just like we're going to be in a bind. And I had an informal discussion with Jack that, this is, as JT pointed out, this is maybe a good time of year to have this happen, because there's probably less going on than there was a couple of months ago, or even 3 months ago, when construction started to kind of boom again a little bit, and people looking for permits and wanting to do things at their house. So perhaps Marty won't be needed as much. They're going to move him back over there full time. There's no question about it. But perhaps he won't be overwhelmed, especially if Sean is there to help with commercial projects. Because I've asked Jack and I've talked to Marty, whoever we hire, we're likely going to need some kind of transition going on where there's some on-the-job training. Even if it's an experienced code enforcement officer, you bring him into a whole new community or whatever, he's going to need some time, he or she, to get up to speed. So I'm hopeful that we can work something out with the town so that they will help us through that time period. And we'll see how quickly the county gets back to us with their looking at the position we want to create. And it is a dual position, if you remember, 2 part-time positions. One is a code enforcement officer, the other as a public works maintenance assistant. And together they would amount to 40 hours a week, which would make the person eligible for benefits. So that's the current status there. I'm probably going to have another discussion with Jack and Kim. Kim was not available on Veterans Day. She was out of work for a little bit due to some kind of medical situation. She's back to work, I believe, so I will continue to follow up with them and make sure we're agreeing on the path we're taking. And so unless somebody on the board has a real problem with the 60-day, caveat for getting out of the contract, it's not something I'm going to push. Okay, so if nobody else has any other business they want to talk about, I do want to go into an executive session. Hopefully it won't take too long, but we need to talk about a personnel matter. And I would ask Reed to stay and the board to stay. And Pam, do you want to stay for this?
Sure, it's okay.
Probably what we were going to do is JT was going to participate with us. He's got some family issues going on, and he called me right before the meeting to tell me that his father was taken to the hospital today. And he may have to go down to Prattsburgh to take him home from the hospital tonight, as a matter of fact. So he's not going to be available to Zoom with us in this executive session.
Did he say that 100% or he was just giving you a heads up about it?
He
Are you
was
gonna
giving me a heads up, but we both decided just,
Okay.
don't try to Zoom, because what happens if you're contacted in the middle of that and so forth. So
Okay,
he will not participate tonight, unfortunately, but Pam knows some of the background with what we're going to discuss involving personnel. So with that, I guess I'll ask for a motion to, before I do that, we won't have any further business to discuss when we come out of executive session. It will just be to adjourn. So if the public is watching or listening, that's the case. And so now I will ask for a motion to enter into executive session.
I'll
Make
make
the motion.
Motion by Bob, second by Carol. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.